As I said, we had all this data. we have all this data, right? We never, we started to look at, hey, what are some interesting things that we can find? So obviously, Apple and Cisco made a big deal of, in 8.3 and 8.5, those code versions, basically the fast roaming capability and like the ability to, or the iOS-specific optimizations, which, in theory should have helped, iOS roam better. Right, and help their roaming performance. And again, where this kind of came up is some people from Apple asked us if their thing worked with Cisco. We're like, don't you have that data? But in actuality, they don't, right? Because we're the ones that actually see all the customer data and see the wireless perspective, see the client perspective, and so on. And so actually they didn't, and we have that data though. And so we kind of looked at this. We took a very simplistic approach of saying, hey, let's just look through the customers and look for annotations that show that these customers upgraded to those code versions. And let's just look at iOS devices versus other devices and what happened to them, right? And I'll skip a bunch of this stuff, but just kind of get to the meat of it or whatever it is, right? So what we found looking across, a bunch of different customers, at one really big one, we saw iOS get significantly better. And the other operating systems literally just stay the same in terms of their baselines for roaming, which told us that it actually did have an impact. And in general, aggregating across multiple customers, we saw that iOS roaming performance increased by 25%. OS X, Android, Chrome, and Windows had smaller increases, had smaller changes, like what we would consider potentially negligible. Now, the thing is, iOS also started out worse than these other operating systems as well, right? In terms of the percentage of time that their clients had some kind of roaming issue, right, when they roamed. And so, our conclusion here, our very, very basic initial conclusion was that, okay, well, iOS roaming did actually improve significantly because of these changes. And, but they started out bad. But then, Apple sort of pointed out to us, hey, what are you considering for Android? And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. Some Android devices are IoT and static, so they never roam. So maybe that's not fair or whatever. So now we have to, the next set of analysis will be, okay, let's look at, specific HTC phones or whatever phones versus iOS iPhones and sort of do that analysis.
Did you just do deployments that upgraded to A3 or A5, or did you further validate that they actually turned on the adaptive features?
In this very initial analysis, we didn't. We just looked at they went
just A3, code version A3, was all.
That's it, exactly. So it's a very high level kind of analysis.
When you do it again, it'd be neat to see the people that actually flip the widget.
Definitely, okay. definitely. So that's where the next analysis. As I said, I think from Apple's perspective, they're like, wait a minute, do it phone to phone or something like that, right? And then give us that analysis. So there's all sorts of next steps to this. Okay, so one last thing, and there's a white paper. Actually, you can download it from the what do you call it? The website as well. So there's last thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's ironic because I think this subject came up literally 2 years ago when I was at Mobility Field Day, when somebody, I forgot who, asked me. So we have this section where you can benchmark yourself against other customers, but they're all anonymized, right? And someone in the audience asked me, hey, could we know who that, or could we ask them, for a friend request, or can we identify who that is, and maybe share the contact detail? Because let's say for DNS you're sort of the worst, and you have somebody that's the best but anonymous. Maybe you just want, hey, what are you doing, right? And sort of trade ideas or whatever. And I think my answer back then is like, what, you mean like a Tinder for networking or whatever, where both sides swipe right? Sort of, you get that?
So you've got that for us now?
Yes. So now we are a Tinder for networking.
Don't announce something like Tinder for Wi-Fi and not make it.
Exactly. So, show you how this looks like in the product. I'll just pick General Hospital. So there's a section in the product called benchmarks, right? And so this actually, let me show you. Let me use, sorry. Oops. Okay, I'll just use, this is John's house, by the way. That's why it says Casa Turner. So when we benchmark his house, this is just data of John's house compared to the industry at large. but you can kind of dive into a specific metric, and you can get a sense of, okay, compared to John's house, he's labeled as an enterprise, his house. So these are other enterprises that have a similar number of clients, same Wi-Fi, whatever else, right? And now what you can do is, we pick out certain ones that he can actually be friends with or whatever, but basically he can ask for a friend request. The reason this is dimmed out is because he got rejected, or we rejected him behind the scenes.
There's a swipe left.
Apparently, it's too high touch.
Hey, I was going to say, remember what he said earlier.
He's a very hands-on individual.
Yeah.
he touches all our customers.
Broken heart.
What's that?
It should be a little broken heart.
Exactly. But basically, any customer, when they see this kind of a baseline, and again, it changes depending on the metric. Your site looks over here. In this particular case, John's site or John's house is at 8.5% of the time his clients have bad Wi-Fi experience, compared to, there's a site over here, which is like 3.9% or whatever. And the idea here would be that, hey, if that side agreed. Now, we curate all this, so it actually doesn't go directly to the customer. It comes to us, and we figure out whether we want to actually do this. And what we found in general is that, like, the education vertical sort of, embraces this a lot more than enterprises. But yeah, it's something I wanted to bring up here just because of the nature of the fact that it first came up here a couple of years ago. So just something interesting, sort of a social networking to networking kind of aspect of this.
You're going to click the friends button?
What's that?
You're going to click the friends button there? And
Which one? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You have.
Yeah, oh, sorry. These are his friends. Yeah. So.
I do have friends. Not everybody rejected me.
So G-Base is our headquarters in Palo Alto, our office, and John G is John Garrison, who's at the company. These are the two that accepted as friends. No, I'm just kidding.
So I wasn't here last, or when.
Yeah.
What is this? I mean,
Okay, so what are you looking at? Yeah.
I'm missing the point of.
Sorry.
You don't want friends?
Yeah.
Is this my only way to get friends?
Possibly.
I mean,
If I'm an EDU, I
That's all I
could
needed.
invite other EDUs to be in a shared group.
100%. So UNC Chapel Hill, for example, is a customer of ours, right? And so the point of benchmarking in general is to say, okay, suppose your baseline for something is, 20% of clients have DNS latency issues at your environment. You're a university, you're running Aruba Wireless, and 20% of your clients. And let's say you have 10,000 clients that connect to the network. What we're trying to provide here is an objective view of, is 20% good or bad? How do you even know? So we want to take other similar environments to yourself, right? Other universities, right? Same vertical. Other people that are running Aruba, right? So same hardware or whatever. And other universities with similar numbers of clients, like big universities in UNC's case, as an example, right? And we want to provide anonymously comparisons of you versus that, so you can get an objective sense, hey, wait a minute, actually we're really good, and we don't need to do anything, right? Now, in the UNC case, for example, Duke is a very, would be a friend or whatever. And he's like, well, the ACC or whatever, kind of at them all, right? Have different conferences.
They're frenemies.
What's that?
They're frenemies.
They're frenemies. Well, the networking department is our friends, and then the basketball teams are.
I would just like to point out your friends are actually better than you.
No, they're worse.
Oh, that's
So sorry, yeah. In the baseline view, it's
Bigger's
the
not
percentage
better?
of clients with badness.
Bigger's not better?
Bigger is worse in this case. So John is actually better than his friends in this case.
Okay.
John only has 1/1,000,000th of the clients.
Yeah. John
True.
has. Yeah,
I do have like 40 clients at home, but
16.
and 3 active employees.
No, actually, these are pretty similar. This one has 23, and then John Garrison probably has very few clients as well. But yeah. So as I said, like universities, it's sort of like a thing that they've kind of eaten up because there's a lot of collaboration, I think, there. But it remains to be seen for enterprises and so on. But there you go, social networking for networking.
Just out of curiosity, when you go into a customer environment, are any of them apprehensive in doing it just because they're afraid of what they're going to find in their network?
Possibly, I guess, right? There's always that chance that you find issues that you didn't know about, and now shoot.
I mean, just like, hey, I need this product because I have X amount of issues,
Yeah.
and then you get in there and you're like,
I have
oh
more
boy,
issues
I got a lot of work to do, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, that can definitely happen. And, part of this is interpreting the data, which, comes in, hey, can you simplify this? Can role-based access and make sure that, my boss doesn't see the benchmarks or whatever and interpret them in a certain way or whatever, right? Or if you're good, that you want your boss to see the benchmarks.
There are some things where in EDUs, well, so a lot of people have the same DHCP server, whatever server they're using, but they notice that, hey, you don't have as many DHCP issues as I have. Like, why is that? So then they end up collaborating.